In the back bay today, again with Tim, Trowel Inc. is continuing to work on plaster in one of the last rooms, getting that ceiling done, and then a wall. They'll get the rest of the walls kind of built up to that ceiling. So the way that these guys go about is they do adjacent surfaces and always using that ceiling as their control layer to build up that ceiling, make sure that all of these inside corners, as you can see up here, everything is super crisp. Someone actually had commented on, I think on Instagram, that they would love to install millwork on a job like this, and it would make a big difference because I think we've all installed cabinetry on walls that aren't quite flat.
Yeah.
Upstairs, I noticed it was a little cool up there. What's going on upstairs?
It is a little cool. So we ripped out some windows that were existing that we've been planning to replace. You know, it took them forever to get here, but they're here now. So took them out today and hopefully get all the windows reinstalled by the end of the week.
Do you know how long the windows took? I'm curious.
I don't know.
Months, right?
Months, 7 months maybe.
And that's something that we've been battling with and we talk about constantly in the team is, you know, ordering material ahead of time, ahead of what they're telling us our lead times were. And even on those, and similar to some of our other projects, we're ordering them even with a buffer and still not getting them in the time frame that's being communicated to us, which is challenging as a builder and communicating to the client. Like, we're working within the parameters that we're given and we're trying to add, you know, that reasonable buffer to it, but still manufacturers are behind and we're trying to accommodate that. Yeah. So windows, they got those windows open. They're gonna get those installed. Your goal is by the end of the week. But I think what everyone wants to know about is that curved wall. So let's walk over there. So we've seen a couple photos of this. Colby and his team have posted it on their channel. The way he posted about this was that it was cast in place. So we're gonna turn this over to Colby. Colby's gonna give us a full technical breakdown on how they accomplished this wall.
What's up, guys? I'm Colby. I'm the owner of Trowel Inc Plastering. And today we're gonna be talking about what we did to achieve this radius stairway. We were able to get the radius point off of the plans. And we set up what we call a sail, plaster sail, which is a pole in the middle. And we set up our arm off of that radius center point with a pole, and we start to fill up and we base coat. Not touching anywhere.
Nothing. No.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's good though. That's
Yeah, that's what we want right now.
it's a good first coat.
Okay. Just hit right here. We hit all of our base coat with that radius arm. The main reason that we like to build a sail is because NS Builders really framed this wall really nicely, but when you start adding board and anything else to the top of it, it's gonna change the radius. So we had some flat spots in some of the joints. The factory joints where the two seams meet, it ends up being a really flat point. So we knew that we were gonna end up building some of this radius to a really thick, in some points it was maybe 7/8 of an inch thick. So we use a really high PSI veneer base coat, and in the morning we just focused on getting our radius finished. Did one scratch coat really tight, and what we did with basically a rake that we run across our base coat, and it leaves it really roughed up, kind of like a notch trowel for tile, and it's going to allow us to build a really heavy base coat. It's going to hold on, it gives it a good mechanical bond. When you're doing really heavy buildup with base coat, you really need to make sure that you're giving yourself a really good bond mechanically. So I think we did 3 base coats just for this radius wall. We've ended up swinging that thing around, getting our radius really nice to the point where we were happy with it. Our sail was touching everywhere. From that point, we found the point in the wall where the radius ends and the flat begins. And that's really a potential problem area because where you're turning from a radius to a flat wall, you could easily overbuild that area and bring it out past where it should be. So we stopped it right where the radius ended, and we then base coated to this opening right here, and we set our corner bead an 1/8 inch wider to allow for minor adjustments in the field. Then we screeded from a radius point to this corner bead, filled it up, and once these two flat, we actually used the same pole and we swung it out and we used it to set this corner bead at the top of the radius right here. That way we knew that we were getting the corner bead set to the exact same radius as the base coated wall. Because you could do that by hand, by eye, and try and guess it, but having that pole set up while we were here doing it just made getting that corner bead on really easy. We did the same thing with this bead right here as well. Then at that point, we were able to go in and put our final finish coat on, which is a really tight veneer skim coat. It's gonna be a really nice surface for paint. It's really highly impact resistant, scratch resistant. That's what you see here, that's our final coat. We accelerated it a good.
Small hand.
Good amount.
Yeah, how much? This
So once this was 100% complete, we came in the next day and we were able to start working on the walls above us. The reason that we didn't, normally we work from top down. The reason we worked from bottom up in this area is because what the depth was going to be of this radius wall. Once we got that sail set up, we knew we were going to be building up really heavy in some spots. So we really needed to get this area done before we could finish the tops, then dictate how thick we had to build up our plaster up top of the stairway. Came in the next day after this wall was done, and we left a little spot right here, a 4-inch strip of our base coat. And we were able to then level off of that point on the base coat all the way up to those chalk lines up there at the top of the stairway and level our plaster from this point all the way up to the top so that there's no change in the face of this plaster from the bottom of the stairway all the way to the top. We wanted to make sure that this was really super flat all the way up because you have tons of recessed lighting up there. Once we got these two walls done, we found our center point on this radius. You can see that little pencil line right there. That's the dead center point of this radius. And we ended up building out this top middle piece right to that center. And it looks like there's a line that separates the two right there because of our corner bead, but actually in the middle of that wall, it comes down and it's completely flush for about 1/2 inch in the middle. So this radius wall comes in and just kisses that flat wall right in the center. And that flat wall then goes out while this radius wall comes out from the side. So it comes down. We really needed to make sure that this was right on point because it could have easily gotten off-centered and this whole thing would have looked twisted. I think if we didn't set up and make a sail, trying to do this just by hand would have been nearly impossible. You can get a decent finish that way, but with what we were dealing with here, with the really low tolerances, with this off-site built staircase, it was just too risky to try and do it by hand. You really can't tell how much you're building up, how much you're underbuilding. When you're out, it might feel smooth to the hand, but when we're dealing with what we need to be an exact radius, there's just no better way to do it. Traditional plastering techniques of setting up a sail in a screed. When we leave the job, no matter where you look, even if it's a closet, it's underneath the stairway, if it's in a space that may never be seen or be seen very little, even when you go in those areas and you see them, they're still going to all look the same as the entry or the grand hallway or the stairway or whatever. We like to know that everywhere you look at the job, it's going to look just as good as anywhere else.
You actually took a ride up to Bob King's shop up in New Hampshire.
Yep.
So what was that about?
So I went up there to go and pick up some floor templates, but he was nice enough to kind of give me a tour of his shop, and I saw large portions of our staircase in their finish section, half assembled, and kind of talked me through their process and gave me a tour.
What was that, kind of in summary, what was that process like? Because I always think about stairs. We've built some in our shop, we built them on site, and they always seem to take a lot of time. And I've, in the background kind of saw Bob and his team model this thing. And frankly, for me, like I realized how, not simple, but how streamlined and efficient they become with the process, where it's like they were able to modify these stairs quite literally in the model live.
Yeah.
And knew right from there, like once that model was approved, they'd go right into the shop because I think I saw an email just a few weeks later like, hey, the stairs all set.
Yeah, that was the nice thing about the 3D model is it helped when we were doing Zoom meetings and things like that. Any change we made directly just shipped into CAD. There was no third party that had to go in and modify any of these numbers. When we changed it in the 3D model, it directly imports into his system where he uses the what do you call them? CNCs. So that's why most of the parts are cut, all by CNC. So you kind of ask, like, what did it look like there?
Yeah.
I would say it looked similar, closer to a cabinet shop than it did, like a woodworking shop or something like that. All the parts are kind of sitting. You can tell what's been sanded, what hasn't been sanded, all their different machines doing the CNC. And then they actually finish on site too. And that's where I got to see our skirts, kind of
Yeah.
laid up and hung on sticks, and they were painting them when I was there.
What's your, this is a little off key here, but what's your take on CNC? Being a carpenter growing up, what is your take on that?
I mean, it's useful. I would have much rather built a staircase like this here.
Why is that?
Just it's fun. This is
Yeah.
challenging stuff. Just like, I mean, everything that Bob does and everything that they do there is super challenging to do, in field. And they can do it, debatably more accurate.
Sure.
Doesn't mean it's not fun.
Right. So, do you because it's a conversation we've had a lot,
Yeah.
especially on the podcast, is like the CNC is ripping the craftsmanship out of it, and I look at it kind of through a different lens where I think that it opens the opportunity for more creativity and craftsmanship because of constraint.
Yeah.
And we say constraint breeds creativity, and I think that oftentimes now, especially nowadays, it's usually money and financial, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like we could build this on site, but we'd spend a lot of man hours doing it.
Absolutely.
And if money was no object, we could spend a year building the staircase and it would be perfect.
Yeah.
But the ability to utilize computers and things like CNC give us that ability to have that accuracy in a shorter amount of time, which in my opinion, and I've had this conversation with Ken at Materia, is that allowing the computer to do those parts that are monotonous allows you to then, when you do have that ability to spend more on a particular process, you can get more creative with it. Where it's like there are, for example, the plaster, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like we're able to outsource the stair, we know it's gonna be built. This could have just been framed, blue boarded, and 14-inch troweled, and been close, and then when the stair showed up, we would have had a base cap that would have filled and been caulked, and
Yeah.
Ultimately it would have looked the same, but not have been a great result.
Yeah.
So a big thanks to Colby for walking us through it. For me, and I know Tim, like you feel very similar, is like this is the stuff that makes our job fun.
Yeah.
It gives us the ability, like when we get to work with our trade partners in putting out a better product and giving them the opportunity to put out a better product, it's rewarding for everyone. The client gets a really great product at the end. We get a great process. They get the opportunity to hone their skills. And oftentimes we hear it from them that they don't have these opportunities with every builder. And to know that we're kind of, more open to hearing like, hey, how can we accomplish a better product, and giving them that opportunity, is rewarding in itself.
Agree.
So big thanks to you guys at Trowel. We'll see you guys next week.